Top story for us. Indian Prime Minister Modi is in the U.S. and says his country is entering a new era of relations during his official state visit here in Washington. He hopes to boost economic and strategic ties. Modi met with President Biden on Thursday. Our White House correspondent Nathan King has this.
Well, obviously focused very much on the strategic and defense relationship growing between the U.S. and India. The economic is perhaps the most impressive platform. As you know, India is now the most populous country in the world, and as the U.S. seeks to diversify its supply chain away from China, India is seen as a potential technology hub, as it's known around the world for technological innovation. 3 U.S. chip companies announcing massive investments, land research, Micron Technologies, and others, billions of dollars in terms of production, research, but also training of Indian semiconductor engineers. General Electric manufacturing jet engines will be in India, sharing technology they don't even share with Japan. Now that's really interesting because, of course, India relies very heavily on its defense capabilities with Russia. The US has sanctioned that in the past, but now waving that through. And if you read through this technological document, they're really concentrating on the industries of the future. As Narendra Modi said, it's from semiconductors all the way to space. There's a joint mission plan for 2024 to the International Space Station. So all these things coming together. Let's listen to both leaders.
Together, we're unlocking a shared future of what I believe to be unlimited potential. And with this visit, we're demonstrating once more how India and the United States are collaborating on nearly every human endeavor and delivering progress across the board.
By increasing our cooperation in fields such as artificial intelligence, semiconductors, space, quantum, and telecom, we are creating a strong and futuristic partnership.
Now, big deals always announced on both ends. India, as you saw, pledged to buy 200 Boeing aircraft. It's actually going to set up a consulate in Seattle where Boeing is based, and of course, big Microsoft and Amazon presence there, and very much talk about focusing on industries of the future like AI, healthcare, for example, especially when it comes to preparing for another pandemic. The US is caught short with PPE. They think India can help with that, as well as vaccine production. But, you know, as you know, India is not a free trade nation traditionally. It's not part of RCEP, for example, the ASEAN trade deal. It doesn't really embrace all the IPEF procedures that the US wants to have allies and close partners take on in the Indo-Pacific region, as they call it. So the protectionism that the US has sort of tried to impose is kind of where the Indian model is. So it's going to be very interesting to see how a lot of this wishful thinking, but quite dense in terms of this economic thinking, actually translates into reality. Meanwhile, a huge party going on behind me throughout the night with a lavish state dinner. Nathan King, CGTN at the White House.
For more on India and U.S. relations, we have with us Shuja Nawaz, Distinguished Fellow at the South Asia Center of the Atlantic Council. Good to see you and welcome to the show. They're having dinner right now, but over the past 48 hours, there's been a lot of very serious discussions, from geopolitics to military to economic alliances. And we already had a good relationship with the U.S. and China already. But I think this visit, what's highlighted to me is that it seems to be taking it to the next level, right?
Yes, it's a very detailed statement of intent, some 58 paragraphs that noted all the various categories that some were highlighted by your reporter earlier, which include technology, which include trade, which include next generation defense, as well as opening up the visa regime and clean energy and strategic issues, particularly the drawing of India into the Quad as a kind of a counterweight to China's influence in the Pacific region.
Right. So you say the counterweight to China's influence, and some people have said that this could be very much a temporary alliance that is convenient for the U.S., but some also see it as a very permanent bond that not just President Biden, but the White House, no matter who's inside the White House, is creating this bond with India, and whether it's to deal with what's happening in China or, quite frankly, to have more of an influence in Asia. I think the reason is worth talking about. What is the instigation that's causing this alliance to grow?
Well, there is a U.S. point of view, and then there's an Indian point of view. And one of the preeminent Indian scholars who studies the India-U.S. relationship, Ashley Tellis, at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, has pointed out that the two paths may not actually converge, and that India will go along with the United States, but it cannot be seen as a partner. The other thing is, how long will this last? If you recall, the TPP, the trade partnership that President Obama had introduced, was pulled by President Trump. So we don't know to what extent those trade relationships will be sustained and to what extent they will be extended to the ASEAN as a whole, rather than be confined to the Quad, which the United States has favored as a kind of a trade and security alliance.
What does the U.S. offer India in terms of, for lack of a better word, an economic partner?
The United States is, of course, the largest trading partner for India at the moment. But we mustn't forget that China also is an enormous trading partner, and that the Chinese trade with India grew something like 34% between 2020 and 2021. So there's competition based on the comparative advantage of both countries, India as well as China, and between India and the United States. The U.S. is offering technology, which is a breakthrough for India, that General Electric, for instance, will now produce jet engines in India, which will probably see the Indian airlines and Indian training aircraft through for the next couple of decades. That's a big issue that has been finally resolved. But we now have to see how well the bureaucracies on both sides will allow this to be implemented at a pace.
Shuja, what do you think so I think we understand that seems very positive, but we're talking about a potential three-way relationship, right? You have China, you have India, and you have the U.S. I mean, what do you think China's reaction to this so-called alliance or relationship might be?
Well, from all current trends, China is still looking to develop a greater trading relationship with its neighbors, including India. The question is, to what extent will India now allow China to set up major projects and operations inside Indian territory? But the nature of the trade between the two countries seems to suggest that India will still continue to import a lot of manufacturers from China.
What is the end game here? 2 or 3 years from now, we don't know who's going to be in the White House. So we're going to block out politics for just a moment. But what does the relationship look like between India and the U.S. in the face of sort of the geopolitical tensions that we see with China, say 2 or 3 years from now?
I think there will be a steady Indian view of things, which is that we will go along, but we are not going to become subservient to U.S. interests in the region, because by all accounts, Narandra Modi is in a very strong position domestically as he faces re-election. The question is whether President Biden will win next year. And if he does, then perhaps there will be a continuity and a convergence over the next 3 years or so.
Well,
However, if he doesn't win, then all bets are off.
Well, I don't want to oversimplify the complex nature of politics, but I guess if we're friends, we enjoy each other while we have each other, and we certainly think very positively about the future. Shuja, thank you very much. Really appreciate your analysis on this important topic.